Have you ever thought that a simple traffic light could change your destiny forever? In the streets of Guadalajara, a millionaire hears a child's voice that breaks his heart. "Sir, my mom is sick. Can you help me?" What he discovers behind that plea not only transforms the life of that little girl, but shows him the true meaning of love. Stay until the end to find out how an act of compassion can become the greatest fortune of your life. The morning in Guadalajara dawned cold and gray, with a cloudy sky that hinted at rain. Fernando Ruiz drove his black SUV through the downtown streets, thinking about the contracts he needed to review that afternoon in his office. At 37, he had built a real estate empire, but his personal life was a silent desert. No family, no partner, no one waiting for him at home, just the echo of his footsteps in a massive mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. The traffic light turned red, and Fernando stopped, idly watching the street vendors offering candies and flowers among the cars. It was a common sight in the city, something he'd seen 1,000 times without paying much attention. But then, a child's voice pierced through his car window, cutting straight to his heart. "Sir, my mom is sick. Can you help me?" The voice trembled with desperation and cold. Fernando turned and saw a girl, about 6 years old, with disheveled brown hair tied in 2 uneven pigtails. Her brown eyes glistened with unshed tears, and she clutched an old, worn rag doll against her chest. She wore a pink sweater too big for her and gray pants stained with dirt. Her white sneakers were torn on one side. Fernando felt something inside him break at the sight of her pleading gaze. For years, he had built walls around his heart, shielding himself from the pain of loneliness with work and emotional distance. But in that moment, faced with those innocent eyes full of desperate hope, those walls crumbled. He rolled down the window completely and leaned toward the girl. "What's your name, little one?" he asked softly, trying not to scare her with his deep voice. The girl wiped her tears with the back of her hand, leaving a damp streak on her dirty cheeks. "Thalía, sir, my name is Thalía," she replied in a faint voice. "My mommy hasn't eaten since yesterday, and she fainted this morning. She's cold and shaking a lot. Please help me." Her words tumbled out in a rush, as if she feared the light would turn green and the well-dressed man would drive away forever. Fernando studied the girl's face closely, noticing the dark circles under her eyes, the pallor of her skin, her cracked lips. This child hadn't eaten properly in days, maybe weeks. A knot tightened in his throat. Without a second thought, he opened the car door and stepped out, kneeling in front of Thalía to meet her at eye level. The drivers behind him began honking, but Fernando ignored them. "Take me to your mommy, Thalía." "I'm going to help you," he said firmly, taking the girl's cold little hand in his. Talia's eyes lit up a mix of surprise and profound relief, and Fernando's own eyes misted over. The girl nodded repeatedly, clutching her doll tighter, as if afraid this moment was just a dream. "Really, sir? You'll really help us?" she asked in a trembling voice, incredulous after so many rejections. Fernando nodded and gave her a reassuring smile. "Really, little one, I promise." He stood up and looked around for a place to park, ignoring the insistent honking. He pulled his SUV to the side of the street, turned on the hazard lights, and returned to Thalía. The girl was already walking ahead, almost running along the sidewalk, glancing back every few steps to make sure the kind man hadn't changed his mind. The urgency in her movements made Fernando's heart race. They walked through narrow streets in the historic downtown, passing closed shops and old buildings with peeling facades. Thalía led him to a cramped alley where the stench of garbage and dampness hit hard. Fernando clenched his jaw, realizing there was a world of suffering in his own city that he had ignored for years. Sheltered in his bubble of comfort, he had been blind to it. The girl stopped in front of a makeshift structure of cardboard and tarps tied with ropes. "Here it is, sir," Thalía murmured, pointing to the entrance with her small finger. Her voice had lost its strength, as if the fear of what they'd find inside stole her breath. A chill ran down Fernando's spine. He didn't know what to expect, but the heavy air in that place warned him his life was about to change forever. He took a deep breath, crouched down, and entered the shack with Thalía close by his side. What he saw inside stopped his world entirely. The darkness was nearly total, broken only by a sliver of light filtering through poorly placed cardboard. The smell of dampness and illness permeated the stale air of the tiny space. On a pile of rags spread over the concrete floor lay an unconscious woman, so pale she looked like a ghost. Her skin had a grayish tint that alarmed Fernando immediately. She wore worn-out jeans and a white blouse stained with dirt and sweat. Her long, wavy brown hair was tangled and dirty, splayed around her gaunt face. Fernando knelt beside her and gently touched her forehead. It was cold and clammy at the same time. Her breathing was shallow and irregular. "How long has she been like this?" he asked, not taking his eyes off the woman. His voice was tense, controlled, but inside, panic was rising in his chest. Thalía sat beside her mother, stroking her hand with infinite tenderness. "Since last night, sir, she fainted when she tried to stand to get water," the girl replied, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I gave her all the water we had, but she didn't wake up. She has a fever and shakes a lot." Fernando looked around the shack and saw absolute misery. An empty plastic bottle, 2 threadbare blankets, a bag of dirty clothes, nothing else. No food, no medicine, not even a decent place to sleep. Anger and helplessness surged within him at such injustice. How was it possible that in the 21st century, in his city, people lived in these conditions? He turned back to the unconscious woman and noticed a folded manila envelope next to the rag serving as a pillow. Without thinking much, he picked it up and tucked it into the inner pocket of his jacket. If he needed to take her to a hospital, any documents could be useful. He removed his gray jacket and draped it over the woman's trembling body, trying to give her some warmth. "Thalía, I need you to be very brave, okay?" Fernando said, looking at the girl with seriousness but also kindness. "I'm going to carry your mommy and take her to the hospital. You'll come with me. She's going to be okay, I promise." The girl nodded vigorously, wiping her tears with the sleeves of her oversized sweater. "Really, sir, the doctors will make her better." Her voice was filled with desperate hope, the kind of blind faith only children hold on to in the worst circumstances. Fernando nodded firmly, slid his arms under the woman's fragile body, and lifted her. He was shocked at how light she was, practically skin and bones, a weight that shouldn't belong to an adult. He held her against his chest carefully, as if she were made of glass, and left the shack with Thalía following close behind. Passers-by stared curiously, but Fernando paid them no mind. His only priority was getting to the hospital as fast as possible. On the way to his SUV, he felt the woman's body trembling against his. Each shiver that ran through her broke his heart a little more. He gently laid her in the back seat, propping her up as best he could. Thalía climbed in immediately and sat beside her mother, holding her cold hand in her small ones. "Hold on, Mommy. This kind man is going to help you," the girl whispered over and over like a mantra of faith. Fernando started the engine and drove urgently but carefully, weaving through Guadalajara's morning traffic. He turned on the hazard lights and accelerated as much as he could without risking anyone's safety. In the rear-view mirror, he watched Thalía stroke her mother's face, speaking softly to her, telling her everything would be okay. The girl's devotion to her mother was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Fernando swallowed hard, feeling a tight knot in his throat. "Sir," Talia's voice broke the tense silence in the vehicle. He glanced at the mirror and saw the girl's tearful eyes looking at him. "My mommy didn't eat anything yesterday or today. She gave me all the food we got. She always does that. She says I need to grow strong, but she needs to eat too." The girl's words hit Fernando like heavy stones. This unknown woman had sacrificed her own health, her own life, so her daughter could eat. That kind of selfless, unconditional love was something Fernando had never experienced. His parents had died when he was young, leaving him a fortune but no memories of true affection. Now, before him, a dying mother and a brave little girl showed him what real love meant. He gripped the steering wheel tightly and sped up a little more. He had to save her. He simply had to. Minutes later, the doors of Guadalajara's civil hospital came into view. Fernando screeched to a stop at the emergency entrance and ran out to get help. Doctors rushed with a stretcher, and as they took the unconscious woman away, Fernando reached into his pocket and pulled out the manila envelope, ready to discover who this woman was who had just changed his life. Fernando opened a manila envelope with trembling hands as he waited in the emergency room. Thalía sat beside him, swinging her short legs that didn't reach the floor, clutching her rag doll against her chest. The hospital smelled of disinfectant, and the fluorescent ceiling lights buzzed faintly. Inside the envelope were some old documents, a worn voter ID, a birth certificate folded in quarters, and an old photograph. Fernando picked up the ID first and read the name printed in black letters. His eyes widened, and his breath stopped for a moment. Melissa Morales Vega, 30 years old, Guadalajara, Jalisco. It couldn't be possible. His heart pounded so hard he felt it in his temples. With trembling fingers, he picked up the yellowed photograph and held it to the light. It was an image of two smiling children in front of an elementary school, a boy with black hair and dark eyes, and a girl with pigtails and huge smile. Him and Melissa, over 25 years ago. Memories flooded his mind like an unstoppable avalanche. Benito Juarez Elementary School in the Analco neighborhood. Recess spent playing marbles under the playground trees. Melissa always won because she had incredible aim. They laughed together, shared tortoise during lunch, protected each other from the bigger kids who bullied them. They were inseparable, the best friends in class. Everyone said they'd get married someday, and they'd just blush and shake their heads. But then, when Fernando was 11, Melissa's family moved away. Her father got a job in another state, and they left overnight. Melissa cried so much that last day that Fernando promised he'd never forget her. They wrote letters for a few months, but eventually, the communication faded. Life moved on. Fernando grew up. His parents died in an accident when he was 19. He inherited their business and multiplied it, becoming one of Guadalajara's most successful entrepreneurs. But he always kept a memory of his childhood friend in a special corner of his heart. "Sir, you're crying." Talia's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Fernando touched his face and realized tears were streaming down his cheeks uncontrollably. He wiped them quickly and smiled at the girl, trying to reassure her. "I'm okay, little one. It's just that I recognize your mommy. We were friends when we were kids like you." Talia's eyes widened in amazement, her mouth forming a perfect, "Oh, really, you knew my mommy?" Fernando nodded, holding her gaze with tenderness. "Yes, a long time ago. We were very good friends. We played together every day." The girl moved closer and rested her head on Fernando's arm. "Then you're like family," she murmured in a tired voice. Those simple words pierced a millionaire's heart like a well-aimed arrow. Family, a word that had lost meaning for him long ago. Now, inexplicably, fate was offering him a second chance. A young doctor in a white coat emerged from the double doors of the emergency room and looked around. "Family of Melissa Morales," he called in professional but weary voice. Fernando stood immediately, taking Talia's hand. "That's me, doctor. How is she?" The doctor checked his clipboard and sighed. "She's stable for now. She fainted due to severe malnutrition and dehydration. She also shows signs of acute anemia. Her body is extremely weak. We'll keep her under observation and hydrate her intravenously. She'll need to stay at least 3 days to recover properly." Relief washed over Fernando like a wave, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Can I see her?" The doctor shook his head. "She's still unconscious. Come back tomorrow morning. Leave a contact number at reception in case of any emergencies." Fernando thanked the doctor and went to the counter to provide his information. As he filled out the forms, a certainty settled in his chest. He wasn't going to abandon Melissa and Thalía. Fate had reunited them after so many years, and this time he wouldn't let them go. They left the hospital, and the midday sun shone brightly over Guadalajara. Fernando looked at Thalía, who was dragging her feet, clearly exhausted physically and emotionally. "Thalía, when was the last time you ate something?" The girl shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "I don't know, sir. Yesterday morning, I think. My mommy gave me a sweetbread a lady gave us." Fernando clenched his teeth, holding back the anger he felt at such injustice. This little girl hadn't eaten in over 24 hours. He knelt in front of her and fixed a loose pigtail. How about we go eat something delicious, and then I take you to my house to rest? I have people there who will take good care of you while your mommy recovers." Thalia's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude. "Really, sir, can I stay at your house?" Fernando nodded and extended his hand. "Really, little one, we're family now, remember?" Thalía took his hand tightly and gave him the first genuine smile he'd seen on her face, a smile that would light up the days to come in a way he never could have imagined. Fernando's mansion in Guadalajara's residential area was impressive, with 3 stories, perfectly manicured gardens, and a stone fountain at the entrance. Thalía stared wide-eyed, as if she'd stepped into a fairy tale palace, clutching Fernando's hand tightly, afraid to touch anything and break it. "Do you live here all alone, sir?" she asked timidly as they crossed the marble foyer. Fernando nodded with a sad smile. "Yes, little one. It's a big house for just one person, isn't it?" As soon as they crossed the threshold, 2 middle-aged women appeared from the kitchen. Rosa, the housekeeper, and Lupita, the cook, froze when they saw their boss arrive with a disheveled, dirty little girl. Fernando quickly explained the situation, and both women exchanged looks of immediate understanding. Without a word, Rose approached Thalía and knelt to her level. "Hello, my beautiful girl. Are you hungry?" Thalía nodded shyly. "Very, ma'am." In less than an hour, Thalía was bathed, dressed in clean clothes Rosa had gotten from her parish's charity shop, and sitting in the kitchen devouring a plate of red chilaquiles with chicken and cream. Lupita watched her with tears in her eyes, serving her more food every time she finished a bite. "Oh, dear Lord, this child was starving," the cook muttered, crossing herself. Fernando watched the scene from the kitchen doorway, his heart heavy. Seeing Thalía eat so desperately reminded him how cruel the world could be. After eating, the girl fell asleep on the living room sofa, clutching her rag doll. Rosa covered her with a soft blanket and stroked her hair with maternal tenderness. Poor thing, what happened to her mom, Don Fernando? The millionaire told them the whole story over coffee in the dining room. Both women listened intently, wiping tears from time to time. "That girl is staying here until her mom recovers," Fernando declared firmly, "and I want you to treat her like family." The next 3 days were the strangest and most wonderful Fernando had experienced in years. Every morning, after breakfast with Thalía, he went to hospital to visit Melissa, who remained unconscious but stable. The doctor said her body was slowly recovering from severe malnutrition. Fernando sat by her bedside for hours, watching her pale, gaunt face, remembering the cheerful, laughing girl who had been his best friend. He spoke to her softly, telling her about Thalía, how he was caring for her, and their childhood memories together. He didn't know if she could hear him, but he needed to say those things. He needed her to know she wasn't alone. In the afternoons, he returned to the mansion and spent time with Thalía. The girl had shed her shyness and now filled the house with her laughter and stories. She told him about things she'd seen on the streets, the hard days living the cardboard shack, and how her mom always found ways to make her smile, even when they had nothing. "Mr. Fernando," Thalía said one afternoon as they drew together in the living room. She had stopped calling him just sir, and now used his name, which warmed his heart. "Can I tell you something really sad?" Fernando set down his pencil and sat on the floor beside her, giving her his full attention. "Of course, little one. You can tell me anything." The girl took a deep breath, as if preparing for something painful. "About 2 months ago, my mommy and I lived in a small but nice apartment. She worked cleaning houses, and I went to school. Everything was okay." She paused, her eyes filling with tears. "But one day, the landlord came, really angry because my mommy didn't have money to pay him. He kicked us out and threw all our stuff onto the street. My mommy cried a lot that day, anger and sadness mixed in Fernando's chest. What happened next?" Thalía wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "We tried staying with a friend of my mommy's, but she was having problems too and couldn't help us. So we started sleeping on the streets. One night, it rained really hard, and we had nowhere to go," she continued, her voice trembling. "I was so cold and scared. There were thunder and lightning, and I couldn't stop crying. But my mommy hugged me tight and sang to me all night, so I wouldn't be afraid. She got completely soaked to cover me with her jacket. The next day, she was really sick, coughing a lot, but she kept looking for food for me. She never complained, Mr. Fernando, never. Tears streamed freely down the girl's cheeks. Fernando hugged her tightly, his own face wet with tears. This brave woman had sacrificed everything, absolutely everything, for her daughter, and this little girl, despite enduring terrible things, remained sweet, intelligent, and full of love. Your mommy is a very brave woman, Thalía, and you're a very strong girl. But you're not alone anymore, do you hear me? You'll never be alone again. The girl nodded against his chest, clinging to him like a lifeline. In that moment, Fernando knew with absolute certainty that these two people had come into his life to fill the void he'd carried for so long. The morning of the fourth day dawned with a radiant sun over Guadalajara. Fernando received a call from the hospital. At 8 a.m., Melissa had woken up. His heart leapt, and he immediately woke Thalía, who jumped out of bed with overflowing joy. My mommy woke up. Really, Mr. Fernando. The girl danced around the room, hugging her doll tightly. 20 minutes later, they were in the SUV heading to the hospital. Thalía didn't stop talking, telling Fernando everything she wanted to say to her mom, all the wonderful things she'd experienced in those 3 days. When they arrived, they ran through the hallways to the room. Fernando paused at the door, letting Thalía go in first. The girl rushed to the bed, shouting, "Mommy!" and threw herself into Melissa's arms, careful not to hurt the 4 lines. Melissa hugged her daughter with all her strength, crying with happiness and relief. "My beautiful girl, my treasure, are you okay?" she repeated, kissing her head. Fernando watched from the doorway, a lump in his throat. Melissa looked gaunt, but her brown eyes shone with life again. Her hair was clean and combed, thanks to the nurses, and a hint of color had returned to her cheeks. Thalía pulled back slightly and pointed to the door. "Mommy, look who took care of me these days. It's the kind man who helped us." Melissa looked up and met Fernando's eyes. For a moment, there was only confusion in her gaze, as if she were trying to recall something important. Fernando stepped forward, entering the room fully. "Hello, Melissa," he said softly. She squinted, studying his features closely. Suddenly, her expression changed dramatically. Her eyes widened, and her mouth formed a perfect, "Oh, Fernando Ruiz." Her voice came out as a broken whisper. He nodded with a sad smile. "Yes, it's me. It's been a long time, hasn't it?" Melissa covered her face with her hands and began sobbing uncontrollably. No, she repeated, hiding her face as if wanting to disappear. It can't be that you found me like this. My God, why?" Thalía looked at her mother, confused, not understanding why she was so distressed. Fernando approached and sat in the chair beside the bed, keeping a respectful distance. "Melissa, it's okay. Everything's okay." But she shook her head violently. "It's not okay, Fernando. You saw me living in a cardboard shack, dirty, starving like a homeless person. You, who were my best friend, the kindest boy I knew. And now look at you, a successful businessman with fancy clothes and a luxury SUV." Her words came out between sobs. "I'm so ashamed, so much that I wish I could die right here." Fernando's heart broke at the pain in her eyes. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Ashamed of what, Melissa? That life hit you hard? That you had bad luck?" "Life changes for everyone in ways we can't control," he continued, his voice firm but full of compassion. "What matters isn't where I found you, but that I found you. What matters is that you and Thalía are alive, and now you're going to be okay." Melissa looked at him with swollen, red eyes, trembling with emotion. "But, Fernando, I was your friend, the girl who played with you at school, and now I'm this." She gestured to herself with contempt. Fernando shook his head and reached out, gently taking her hand. "You're still Melissa Morales, the bravest girl I knew, the one who stood up to bullies for me, who shared her lunch when I forgot mine. And now you're a mother who sacrifices everything for her daughter. That's not shameful, Melissa. That's heroic." His words fell over her like a healing balm. She stopped sobbing and looked at him with tear-filled eyes, but also with gratitude. Thalía snuggled next to her mother, taking Fernando's hand too. "Mommy, Mr. Fernando is really kind. He took good care of me." Melissa took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She wiped her tears with a bedsheet and looked at Fernando intently. "I need to tell you what happened to me. I need you to understand how I ended up like this." Fernando nodded, ready to listen. Melissa squeezed Talia's hand and began. "After we moved when we were kids, my life was tough. My parents split up, and my mom went back to her hometown in Michoacan. I stayed here in Guadalajara trying to study and work. I met a man when I was 23. I fell head over heels for him. My parents didn't approve. They said he was irresponsible, but I didn't listen." She paused, pain evident on her face. "I got pregnant with Thalía, and when I told him, he just disappeared. He never came back. He left a message saying he wasn't ready to be a father and not to look for him." Tears rolled down her cheeks again. "I was so ashamed I didn't tell my parents anything. They had been right, and I was a fool. I cut off contact with my family and decided to make it on my own with my daughter. For 6 years, I worked cleaning houses, babysitting, doing whatever I could to give Thalía what she needed," Melissa continued, her voice steadier. "It wasn't much, but we had a roof over our heads and food. She went to a public school near our apartment. But 2 months ago, the lady I worked for the most passed away, and her kids sold the house. I lost my main job and couldn't pay rent. The landlord gave us a week to leave. I tried to find another job quickly, but no one would hire me without recent references. It was like an avalanche. Fernando. In days, we lost everything." She broke down again. "We ended up on the streets. I watched my daughter go cold and hungry, and I couldn't do anything. I felt like the worst mother in the world." Fernando squeezed her hand tightly. "You're not the worst mother, Melissa. You're the best. You survived. You protected your daughter, and now you're going to get through this, but not alone." Melissa looked at him with incredulous eyes. "What do you mean?" If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like this video and comment. God is love. Fernando stood and walked to a window, looking out at the city stretching under the morning sun. He turned back to Melissa with determination. "I want to help you start over the right way, with dignity and respect." Melissa began shaking her head. "Fernando, you've already done too much. You paid for the hospital, took care of my daughter. I can't accept more charity." Her wounded pride battled her desperate need. Fernando returned to her side and knelt by the bed to be at her level. "It's not charity, Melissa. It's friendship. It's what any decent person would do for someone they care about. Would you let your daughter and yourself go back to sleeping on the streets just because of pride?" Those words hit her hard. She looked at Thalía, who watched her with big brown eyes full of hope. The girl had suffered so much in such a short time. Did she have the right to deny her a chance at a better life just because of her shame? "I don't know what to say," Melissa murmured, feeling overwhelmed. Fernando smiled with a warmth that melted some of the ice around her broken heart. 2 days later, Melissa was discharged with strict instructions to rest, eat well, and return for monthly checkups. Fernando had arranged everything while she finished recovering in the hospital. He had rented a furnished apartment in a safe area of Guadalajara, close to his mansion, but far enough that Melissa wouldn't feel intruded upon. It was a modest but comfortable place. 2 bedrooms, a living room, an equipped kitchen, and a small balcony overlooking a park. Nothing ostentatious, nothing to make her feel uneasy. When Fernando and Thalía took her to see the apartment, Melissa froze at the door. Her eyes scanned every corner of the clean, cozy space, and tears began streaming down her cheeks. "Fernando, this is too much," she whispered, her voice trembling. Thalía had already run to the smaller bedroom, shouting excitedly that there was a bed just for her. Fernando placed bags of new clothes he bought on the sofa. "It's not too much, Melissa. It's what's necessary. It's a place where you and Thalía can live safely and with dignity while you recover completely." Melissa walked slowly through the apartment, touching the walls, the furniture, as if afraid it was all a dream she'd wake up from. In the kitchen, there was a stocked pantry, rice, beans, pasta, canned tuna, fruits, vegetables in the fridge, everything basic for weeks. She covered her mouth with both hands, overwhelmed by such generosity. "Why are you doing this for us?" she asked, turning to Fernando, who leaned against the doorframe, watching her. He shrugged with a half-smile. "Because I want to, because life gave me more than I need, and you need a fresh start." He approached her and spoke more seriously. "But there are conditions." Melissa looked at him, alarmed. "Conditions?" Fernando nodded. "You're going to work for me in my office. I need someone to organize files, manage the schedule, help with administrative tasks. Nothing heavy, but it'll be a real job with a real salary. I don't want you to think this is charity." Melissa's eyes filled with tears again, but this time from relief and deep gratitude. A real job meant reclaiming her dignity, earning her keep with her own effort. "You'd really give me a job? You don't care that I have no office experience." Fernando shook his head. "You'll learn fast. You were always smart, Melissa. I remember that well." She wiped her tears and nodded with renewed determination. "I accept, and I promise I'll work hard. I won't let you down." Fernando smiled broadly. "I never doubted that." Thalía ran back from exploring the rooms and threw herself at both adults' legs, hugging them. "Mommy, I have my own bed, and there are toys in the closet." Melissa raised an eyebrow at Fernando. He shrugged innocently. "I might have bought a few things for the girl." Melissa laughed through her tears, and that sounds like music to Fernando's ears. When was the last time he'd heard her laugh? Maybe since they were kids in the schoolyard. The following weeks established a routine that brought stability and peace to the three of them. Melissa started working in Fernando's office, quickly learning the systems, organizing documents, and showing an impressive knack for problem solving. Fernando watched her blossom in her new environment, regaining confidence little by little. Her cheeks regained color. Her hair shone again, and her smile appeared more frequently. Thalía was enrolled in a good elementary school 3 blocks from their apartment. She wore a new uniform, carried a backpack full of supplies, and had a lunchbox with nutritious food every day. Her teachers were amazed at how intelligent and diligent she was, considering she'd missed 2 months of school. Every afternoon, after school, Thalía walked with her mom to Fernando's office. The millionaire had set up a small space in an empty meeting room where the girl could do homework, draw, or read while waiting for the workday to end. She had become the office mascot, greeting everyone with her contagious smile. Fernando found himself looking forward to those afternoons, hearing Talia's small footsteps running down the hallway to his office, seeing her little face peek through the door, hearing her voice say, "Mr. Fernando, I'm here," became his favorite part of the day. She told him about her school day, showed him her drawings, asked him endless questions. Why is the sky blue? How do computers work? Do fish sleep? Fernando answered each question patiently, amazed by her insatiable curiosity. Sometimes, Melissa would walk into the office and find them laughing together, building block towers or playing chess. In those moments, something warm and strange bloomed in her chest, something she hadn't felt in years, not since before Talia's father abandoned her, something dangerous and beautiful at the same time. She tried to ignore it, convincing herself it was just gratitude, but her eyes betrayed her every time she looked at Fernando, and Fernando looked at her in ways that made her heart race. Neither spoke of it, but the air between them crackled with electricity whenever they met in the hallway, or their hands brushed accidentally. Their childhood friendship was rekindling, but it was transforming into something deeper and more complex than either was ready to name. 3 months had passed since that fateful encounter at the traffic light. The routine Fernando, Melissa, and Thalía had built together felt as natural as breathing. Every morning, Fernando stopped by their apartment on his way to work, offering them a ride. Melissa protested at first, saying they could take the bus, but Fernando insisted so much that she eventually accepted gratefully. During the drive, Thalía sang songs she learned at school while Melissa and Fernando talked about the day's plans, office tasks, or shared forgotten childhood anecdotes. Those morning conversations became the fuel that powered Fernando's day. Melissa's laughter filled the car with a warmth that hadn't existed before. Her brown eyes sparkled when she recalled some mischief they'd gotten into as kids, and Fernando found himself staring at her longer than appropriate, memorizing every gesture, every expression. He felt he was reclaiming something precious he'd lost long ago. Not just his childhood friend, but a part of himself he'd forgotten existed. At the office, Melissa had become an indispensable part of the team. Her ability to organize chaos was remarkable. Files that had been disorganized for years now had a logical system. Fernando's schedule, once a mess of overlapping appointments and forgotten meetings, now ran smoothly. The employees adored her because she always had a kind smile and encouraging words. "Good morning, Don Carlos. How's your wife doing?" she'd ask the accountant. "Lupita, I saw you brought chicken for lunch. It smells delicious," she'd say to the receptionist. Small gestures that made people feel seen and valued. Fernando watched her from his office with growing admiration. Melissa wasn't just rebuilding her life. She was flourishing in beautiful ways. She'd gained weight. Her skin glowed healthily. Her hair fell in shiny waves over her shoulders. But more than the physical changes, it was her spirit that had been reborn. The shame and pain she carried at first had transformed into determination and hope. It was beautiful to see. The afternoons were the magical part of the day. Thalía arrived from school bouncing with joy, her backpack swinging on her back, and ran straight to Fernando's office before even greeting her mom. Fernando! She had stopped calling him Mr. Fernando weeks ago, and he loved hearing his name in her cheerful voice. She threw herself into his arms, and he lifted her, spinning her around as she giggled. "How was school today, little one?" Thalía told him everything in vivid detail. What she learned in math, the story they read in Spanish, the fight two kids had at recess. Fernando listened to every word with genuine attention, asking questions, celebrating her achievements. Then he'd pull out a special box from his desk, filled with crayons, paper, stickers, and coloring books. Thalía would settle on the office sofa and draw while Fernando worked on his computer. Every so often, she'd hold up a drawing to show him. "Look, I drew you, me and Mom at your big house." Fernando would take the drawing and look at it with a heavy heart. The three of them together, holding hands, smiling. Weekend became small shared adventures. Fernando invited Melissa and Thalía to breakfast at his mansion, where Lupita prepared feasts fit for royalty. Chilaquiles, huevos rancheros, refried beans, fresh squeezed orange juice, sweet bread from the neighborhood bakery. Afterward, they'd go to Agua Azul Park, where Thalía ran among the trees, chasing butterflies and feeding the lake's ducks. Fernando and Melissa walked behind her, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes, there were comfortable silences where they simply enjoyed being together, watching the girl play. In those moments, their hands brushed accidentally, and both felt sparks run through their skin. They'd glance at each other, blushing like teenagers, and quickly look away. Neither dared take the next step, both terrified of ruining what they'd built. One Sunday, as Thalía played on the swings, Melissa broke the silence. "Fernando, I want to thank you for everything you've done for us. You didn't just save our lives that day at the traffic light. You gave us back hope, dignity, a future." Her voice trembled with emotion. Fernando looked at her, their eyes meeting, holding the gaze longer than friends typically would. "You don't have to thank me, Melissa," he replied, his voice hoarse. "You saved me too. Before I found you, my life was empty. I had money, success, but no purpose, no joy. I come home to my huge mansion every night, and the silence swallowed me whole. But now," he paused, searching for the right words, "now I have something to wake up for every morning. I hear Talia's laughter in my office, and my heart beats again. I see you smile, and I remember life can be beautiful." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Melissa's heart pounded so hard she feared he could hear it. She wanted to say something, to confess she felt the same, that she fell asleep every night thinking of him, that her feelings had long surpassed gratitude. But fear paralyzed her. What if she was misreading everything? What if he only felt pity for them? What if she ruined this perfect relationship by wanting it to be more? Thalía ran back at that moment, breaking the tension. "I want ice cream. Can we get ice cream?" Fernando laughed and ruffled her hair affectionately. "Of course, little one. Let's go get ice cream." Melissa let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. But something had shifted in that moment. A door had cracked open, and neither could close it again. Thalia's 7th birthday was approaching, and Fernando was determined to make it unforgettable. The girl had never had a real party, just modest celebrations with a small cake and maybe a simple gift. This year would be different. Fernando hired a team of professional decorators who transformed his mansion's garden into a dreamland. Pastel balloons covered every tree. Tables dressed in white linens glowed under fairy lights. There was a huge inflatable castle, a dessert table straight out of magazine, clowns, magicians, and even a petting zoo. Melissa protested when she saw the preparations. Fernando, this is too much. It's excessive for a 7-year-old. But Fernando shook his head firmly. Nothing is too much for Thalía. She deserves this and more after everything she's been through. Melissa couldn't argue with that. Besides, seeing the excitement in her daughter's eyes when she arrived and saw the decorations made every penny worth it. See to meet her halfway. "You look beautiful," he murmured when they stood face to face. Melissa blushed deeply. "Thank you. You look great too." Fernando wore brown dress pants and a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, casually elegant. They stood there, staring at each other like fools, unsure what to say. Rosa watched from the terrace, smiling and shaking her head. Those two need help. The party continued with games, laughter, and delicious food. The cake moment arrived, a massive 3-tiered castle decorated with princesses and flowers. Thalía blew out the candles with all her might as everyone sang Las Mananitas. Her smile was so big it seemed her face might split in two. "Make a wish, my love," Melissa said, kneeling beside her. Thalía closed her eyes tightly, clasping her hands in front of her chest. When she opened them, she looked straight at Fernando, then at her mom, and her smile grew even brighter. She didn't say what she wished for, but something in her mischievous eyes made both adults feel exposed. After the cake, there were more games, a piñata bursting with candies that fell like rain as the children shouted excitedly and dancing. The music shifted to slower songs as the sun began to set, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. Fernando, summoning all his courage, approached Melissa and extended his hand. "Will you dance with me?" Melissa looked at his outstretched hand, then his face. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. She nodded wordlessly and placed her hand in his. They moved slowly to the rhythm of a romantic ballad, hyper-aware of every point where their bodies touched. Fernando's hand on her waist burned through the fabric of her dress. Melissa's hand on his shoulder trembled slightly. They were so close they could feel each other's warmth, hear their quickened breaths. "Thank you for doing this for Thalía," Melissa whispered, looking up to meet his eyes. Fernando smiled tenderly. "I'd do anything for you both. You know that, right?" The weight of those words settled over them. It wasn't just a casual statement of friendship. It was something more, something deep, terrifying, and wonderful. Melissa felt tears prick her eyes. "Fernando, But before she could finish, Thalía appeared, tugging at her mom's dress. "Mommy, come see. The bunnies had babies." The moment broke, but the intensity lingered. Melissa followed her daughter, but glanced back at Fernando one last time. In that silent exchange of looks, they both understood what they'd been denying for months. They were hopelessly, irrevocably in love, and there was no pretending otherwise anymore. The day after the party, Melissa woke with a heavy heart and a mind full of tormenting doubts. She sat on the edge of her bed, watching Thalía sleep peacefully in the next room, and tears began rolling down her cheeks. What was she doing? What right did she have to fall in love with Fernando? He was a successful, respected millionaire who could have any woman he wanted, educated, sophisticated women of his social class. And she was just Melissa Morales, a single mother who had lived on the streets, with no college education, nothing to offer but a daughter and a heart full of scars. Maybe what she felt was just gratitude masquerading as love. Maybe she was confusing her immense thankfulness for his help with romantic feelings. Worse, what if Fernando felt obligation rather than love? What if he was only being kind because she was his childhood friend and he pitied her? The thought of misreading everything filled her with shame. She couldn't risk ruining the stability she'd finally secured for Thalía. She couldn't afford to lose the job, the apartment, the security. It was too selfish to jeopardize all that for her confused feelings. At breakfast, Thalía noticed her mom was quiet and sad. "Mommy, are you sick again?" she asked in a worried voice, remembering those terrible days in the cardboard shack. Melissa forced a smile and shook her head. "No, my love, I'm fine. Just thinking about some things." But she wasn't fine. Her heart was breaking as she made a decision she thought necessary. She had to put distance between her and Fernando before things got more complicated. She had to protect her daughter from another potential abandonment, another devastating disappointment. That afternoon, after dropping Thalía at school, Melissa entered Fernando's office with determined but trembling steps. He looked up from his computer, his face lighting up at the sight of her, that smile that made her stomach flip. "Melissa, good morning. Need something?" She closed the door behind her, took a deep breath, and began, "Fernando, I need to talk to you about something important, something I've been thinking about a lot." Her serious tone made Fernando stand immediately, concern crossing his face. "What's wrong? Is everything okay? Is it Thalía?" "No, Talia's fine." "It's about us," Melissa replied, avoiding his gaze. "I want to thank you for everything you've done. You've been incredibly generous and kind. You saved our lives, gave us a job, a home, hope. I'll be forever grateful." She paused, gathering courage for what came next. "But I think it's time for Thalía and me to become truly independent. I've been saving my salary these past months, and I have enough to look for a cheaper apartment in another neighborhood, something I can afford on my own without depending on anyone." The words spilled out in a rush, as if she feared losing her nerve as she stopped. Fernando felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. The air left his lungs. "What? You want to leave? Why?" His voice sounded broken, desperate. Melissa finally looked at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "Because I need to know I can take care of my daughter on my own. Because I can't keep depending on your charity forever. Because..." Her voice broke. "Because I'm confusing gratitude with other things, and that's not fair to you or me." Fernando rounded the desk and approached her, but Melissa stepped back, keeping her distance. If he touched her, she'd lose all resolve. "Gratitude? You think this has all been about gratitude?" Fernando shook his head, incredulous. "Melissa, I didn't help you expecting anything in return. I did it because I wanted to, because you mattered to me, because..." He stopped, wrestling with his own words, his own fears. Melissa took advantage of his silence to continue, needing to finish before she collapsed completely. "I'll look for an apartment nearby so Thalía doesn't have to change schools. And if you prefer I quit the job to avoid awkwardness, I'll understand completely. I can find another job." Tears streamed freely down her cheeks. "I just want you to know I'll never forget what you did for us. You were our angel when we needed one most. But now I need to prove to myself I can make it on my own, that I'm not a burden to anyone." The word burden struck Fernando like lightning. Suddenly, he understood everything. Melissa wasn't running because she felt nothing for him. She was running because she felt too much and was afraid of not being enough, afraid of being abandoned again, afraid of risking her daughter's stability. Something broke inside Fernando in that moment. All the caution, all the fear, all the restraint he'd held for months evaporated. He stepped toward her with determined strides and took her hands in his before she could back away further. "I don't want to help you, Melissa," he said firmly, clearly, looking straight into her eyes. She blinked, confused, hurt by those words. "What?" Fernando squeezed her hands gently. "I don't want to help you. I don't want to be your benefactor or your savior. I don't want you to thank me every day for what I did." He paused, took a deep breath, and took the most terrifying leap of his life. "I want to live with you. I want to wake up every morning and see your face. I want to hear Talia's laughter filling my house. I want to have dinner together, watch movies on weekends, argue over who does the dishes. I want to be part of your lives, not as a benefactor, but as family, as the man who loves you desperately and loves your daughter as if she were my own." His words hung in the air, so honest and vulnerable they hurt. Melissa stared at him, eyes wide, tears frozen on her cheeks, unable to believe what she'd just heard. "You love me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Fernando smiled through his own tears and nodded. I've loved you since we were kids playing in the schoolyard. I loved you then, and I never stopped loving you, even when I didn't know where you were. And I love you now with all that you are, all you've been through, all your strength and courage. You're not a burden. Melissa, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Before she could respond, the office door burst open and Thalía ran in. Rosa rushed behind her, trying to stop her. I'm sorry, Don Fernando. She got back early from school and slipped away. But Thalía wasn't listening. She had heard Fernando's last words in the hallway, and her eyes shone with joyful tears. She threw herself at both adults' legs, hugging them with all her might. Don't leave, Mommy, please. Fernando loves us, and I love him too. I want him to be my dad. I want us to be a real family. Her voice, broken with emotion, shattered Melissa's last defenses. She knelt beside her daughter and hugged her, sobbing. Fernando knelt too, wrapping his arms around both. In that embrace of three, surrounded by tears and love, a new family was born. 6 months later, Fernando's mansion garden was transformed again, but this time for an even more special occasion. Rows of white chairs lined the petal-strewn aisle, and an arch decorated with seasonal flowers and flowing white fabrics marked the altar where a priest waited with a warm smile. Guests filled every seat. Office employees, neighbors, friends Fernando had accumulated over the years, but who had never seen his vulnerable side. Rosa and Lupita cried in the front row, clutching handkerchiefs, overjoyed to see their boss finally find love. Soft-string quartet music filled the warm afternoon air. Fernando stood nervously at the altar, adjusting his black suit's bow tie for the 10th time. He had never imagined this day would come, that he'd marry, that he'd form a family. For so many years, he had accepted loneliness as his permanent fate. But God had other plans, better than he could have ever dreamed. A shiver of emotion ran through him as the music shifted to the wedding march. All the guests stood and turned toward the house. His heart stopped for a moment. Thalía appeared first, walking slowly down the aisle in a white lace dress that made her look like a little angel. She carried a basket of rose petals, scattering them with absolute seriousness, focused on doing her job perfectly. Her hair was styled in soft curls with a crown of tiny flowers. As she passed Fernando, she winked and blew him a kiss, making him laugh through the tears already streaming down his cheeks. The girl took her place at the front, turning to watch her mom appear. Then Melissa emerged from the house, on the arm of Don Carlos, the office accountant, who had accepted the honor of giving her away. Fernando felt the world stop. Melissa wore a simple ivory dress, without excess or ostentation, that hugged her figure with natural elegance. Her hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, interwoven with flowers. A delicate veil covered her radiant face. She needed no extravagant jewelry or elaborate makeup. Her beauty came from within, from the pure happiness she radiated, from the peace she had finally found. She walked slowly, savoring each step, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. Her eyes never left Fernando, who looked at her as if she were the only thing in the universe. When she reached the altar, Don Carlos placed her hand in Fernando's, and the two men exchanged a nod of respect. Fernando took Melissa's hand, feeling electricity course through his body. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "So are you," she replied with a radiant smile. The ceremony was short but deeply moving. When it came time for the vows, Fernando spoke first, his voice trembling but firm. "Melissa, the day I found you in that shack, I thought I was saving your life, but the truth is you saved mine. You taught me that true wealth isn't in bank accounts or properties, but in love, in family, in shared moments. I promise to love you every day of my life, in sickness and in health, in abundance and in scarcity. I promise to be the best father to Thalía and the best husband to you. I promise never forget where we came from, and always thank God for bringing us together." His words brought tears to everyone present. Melissa wiped her eyes and began her own vows, her voice sweet but powerful. "Fernando, when I was at my lowest, when I had lost all hope, God sent you to us. You restored my faith in humanity, in true love, in miracles. I promise to love you with all my being, to support you in your dreams, to be your partner in all of life's adventures. The priest smiled and declared, by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Fernando lifted Melissa's veil with trembling hands and looked into her eyes for a long moment, memorizing this perfect moment. Then he leaned in and kissed her tenderly, with love, with the promise of a bright future together. The guests erupted in applause and cheers. Thalía ran to them, shouting, I have a dad now! I have a dad! And hugged both their legs. Fernando lifted her into his arms, and the three embraced, crying and laughing at the same time. The reception was a joyful celebration, filled with delicious food, music, dancing, and overflowing happiness. Fernando danced with Melissa to the song they'd carefully chosen, lost in her brown eyes that shone with joy. Then he danced with Thalía, lifting her in his arms as she giggled uncontrollably. As the sun set, painting the sky in impossible colors, Fernando looked around, feeling profound gratitude fill every cell of his body. He had found what he'd been searching for his whole life without knowing it, a true home, not made of walls, but of love. That night, after the guests left and Thalía fell asleep in her new room, Melissa and Fernando sat on the terrace under the stars, holding hands in comfortable silence. 2 years passed like a blissful sigh. The mansion, once a cold museum, transformed into a vibrant home filled with laughter, games, silly arguments, and endless love. Thalía grew beautiful and intelligent, earning top grades in school and filling the house with her art projects and countless questions. She called Fernando Dad with complete naturalness, as if it had always been so. Then came the greatest blessing, a baby, a beautiful boy with dark eyes and chubby cheeks, born on a spring morning, filling the house with his loud cries and adorable gurgles. They named him Mateo, meaning gift from God, because that's exactly what he was. Fernando held his son, marveling at the tiny miracle, while Thalía watched, fascinated, eager to be the best big sister in the world. Melissa looked at them from a hospital bed, tears of happiness in her eyes, unable to believe this was her life now. One quiet afternoon, as Melissa nursed Mateo and Thalía played in the garden, Fernando sat beside them, a profound thought crossing his mind. You know what I'm thinking about? He asked, taking Melissa's free hand. She looked at him curiously. What, my love? Fernando smiled, tears shining in his eyes. That day at the traffic light, Talia's little voice saying, Sir, my mom is sick. Can you help me? If the light had changed a few seconds earlier, if I had taken a different route, if I had ignored her plea, none of this would exist. This family wouldn't exist. His voice broke with emotion. Thank God for that red light. Thank God for guiding Thalía to my window. Thank God for letting me find the true fortune of life. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more stories that will make you believe in the power of love and kindness. Remember, true wealth isn't measured in money or possessions, but in the love we share, the hands we hold, the hearts we touch. Sometimes, a simple act of compassion can change destinies forever. Keep your heart open to helping those in need, because you never know when that act of kindness will become the greatest blessing in your own life. May God bless your path, guide your decisions, and fill your life with true love. May you never lack the compassion to reach out to those who suffer, because in every act of love, God is present. And always remember, when you give from the heart, the universe conspires to return blessings multiplied. See you in the next video with more stories that will touch your soul.